Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Harley Quinn. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This is a Joker-centric episode, and I love it so much. This stepdad storyline for him is so good. I love he has that nightmare. I'm like, I felt like that was probably a dream, because I'm like, you haven't done anything criminal. Why would Batman be coming after you? I'm like, that is kind of interesting. He's like, oh, why is it always dead ends? He's like, I haven't been in a dark alley in like over a year or something like that. And it is, and I love that it's like a mixture of, yeah, your old foe Batman coming after you, but instead of it just being the real Batman, it's Debbie, your arch nemesis. He's even saying she might be the most challenging arch nemesis I've ever had. I'm like, kind of spitting on Batman a little bit there, but I love it. And it's like, oh, did you, and his, Bethany's acting like, oh, did you have this particular dream? He's like, no, I didn't have that dream where she cut off my penis or whatever. And I'm like, oh God, I love this so much. But I mean, of course you probably would have some PTSD. First and foremost, like, the fact is, if it was just a Batman dream, it would make sense. Like, you'd have some form of PTSD. But then, to be fair, like, that complicated relationship they had, like, would even really be PTSD dreams. I mean, maybe on some psychological level, it's like, oh, maybe you missed Batman or something. But, like, no, it's like, right, your new foe isn't even Batman anymore. It's Debbie. I mean, it's that two syllables, Debbie and Batman. So it still kind of fits. You can kind of say it the same way. But I love the like sitcom opening, and they have the nerve to use the lines, why so serious, and we live in a society. I'm like, oh my God. And he's joking with the crosswalk guy, showing like shooting finger guns at him. The guy's like, like everyone's, I even love it. And I love that he walks in. When they were playing the laugh track, I'm like, oh my God, are we literally going full sitcom? But they know it's like something the lady was watching. And she's like, yeah, you went from like psychopath to stepdad to kind of being a bartender slash stepdad, and then you kind of entered the whole like psychopath, but you're so charming and stuff like that. So because he's trying to get his stepson Benicio in a bilingual class, but Debbie ends up like getting her children in. That list of names is probably super significant. I was pausing on it. I'm like, I don't know enough comic book stuff, but that had to be like potential. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I assume like, because DC usually like really like sprinkles in stuff like that. So either those are people related to like the Harley Quinn show in some shape or form, like maybe some writers or anything like that, their names, or maybe like their names are kids or something, or maybe it's like related to like, typically it would be like something related to something DC Comics related, like, oh, someone that has like, maybe like people who've done stuff with Joker or just DC Comic like artists or writers or something like that. I assume that, I'll probably be easily correct in the comments down below by someone who knows who's more well versed in the comic book world. But yeah, the fact is that it's this sweet element of he's just trying to do the right thing. He's trying to look out for his kids. And I love, obviously, how this ties into the moment he showed up at, showed up in this public, I was like, with his goons, I'm like, he's not doing anything evil. He's running for mayor. And I'm like, I mean, it's not that wild because, I mean, obviously, Lex Luthor has been president in the comics and stuff like that before. I don't know if Joker's ever had a powerful, like, position like that before in the comics. I mean, I know he's, like, had, like, wasn't there a time he ended up getting like a Green Lantern's ring and I mean, not just in like a powerful position, like, oh yeah, superpowers and stuff, because I think that is part of like one of his stories that he ends up getting like lantern abilities or something like that. I don't know. But I mean, like, just, political power, like I said, like Lex becoming president at some points in time. I don't know if anything's ever happened like that in Joker in the comics. Once again, I'm not that well versed in the comics, but I love this whole deal. And especially going up against Gordon and TwoFace, because his opponent, the previous mayor, ended up dying. And I was like, oh, the bastard held on for a very long time. Like, he had a literal pole stabbed through him. And I love that he literally died on air. And I love that his kids are watching TV. It's like, oh, no, watching TV while having dinner. It's like, Dad, I think we just saw someone die on television. He's like, oh, yeah, you did, son. And I love that. Because I'm also like, Chris, Bethany calls him Mikoto-san, because I was about to say, like, what do you actually call him? Do you just call him Joker? Which feels weird by me, and like, I guess it is his name. But, yeah, it seems like everything's in a bag, but Barbara keeps stressing the point. What do you actually stand for, Dad? Like, I don't even know what policies you're running on, but Two-Face gets him just like, the kind of stammering his way through answers and stuff to kind of like bide enough time. But, eventually Joker makes his point like, yo, I'm running for mayor. He ends up robbing a bank, but he's not just robbing it for himself. He's giving back to the people. And I love Gary shooting the guy. He's like, Gary, we're not doing the Reservoir Dogs plan. And he does it later on. It's like, damn it, Gary. Damn it, Gary. Either way, I love, they talked about Dean in episode, was it 3, the award show episode? I think that was episode 3. So I was like, oh, it's one of them Dean, or is Dean not there? I don't know. Maybe Dean's one of his old goons and not one of his present day goons. Either way, I love that when he also throwing the money at that lady's face. He's like, oh, sorry. I mean, we were locked out. I mean, we were literally looking at each other, so I thought you were ready. I'm so sorry about that. But he's running on, hey, free healthcare, also running on like educational reform, and they're like, are you running? Oh, you sound like a socialist. He's like, I'm not like a socialist. I am a socialist. It's really good, but he also kind of gets wrapped up in it, because I think there's a part of Joker that's like, oh, he loves the attention and the power, because that's why he was doing the criminal thing in the first place, and now it's like, oh, now you're kind of doing it in a good nature way. And Barbara ends up saying, like, I love it's like, oh my God, are you a Joe bro? And Barbara was like, whoa, no, they refer to themselves as the Sane Clown Posse. But it's like, no, she's like, no, I'm not a Joe bro. But it's like, at least we know what the Joker runs on. He runs on some pretty compelling policies that, like, a lot of people can get behind. I also love that whole line from TwoFace. What was it saying? Like, oh, she needs to have like bells or something around her, because she's like, don't even know when she gets into a room. And it's like, yeah, can't even hear her footstep when she's leaving. It's like, must be all that Batgirl aspect of it. It's like, yeah, you probably get good at that whole like walking around not making a sound thing. So I really love that. Because TwoFace is willing to do whatever it takes. It's like, oh, we have to get down and dirty when it comes to this whole situation. So, Joker's doing his whole thing, which I'm also surprised we didn't get in any actual Bruce Wayne. Like, I mean, he might be still real. Well, to be fair, he's focused on the Frank thing because he's doubling down on work, finding out what Poison Ivy's up to, as we know, because he's the one that has Frank. So we're probably, like, he's probably too focused on that to even notice all the Joker stuff. You think he'd have an issue, but I guess like Joker did turn over a new leaf. So until Joker really does something bad, even though it's like, right, he still is stealing from banks, but I think more people can get behind that than anything else. But yeah, TwoFace kidnaps his stepson. And it's like, so you don't know? He's like, at first he's like, oh wait, how'd you know it was me? He's like, we used to work together like a lot. He's like, oh, he's like, I'm surprised that just after everything that went down, like I thought it's like, oh, you still have my number and everything. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then it's like, yeah, have your stepson. If you didn't realize I'm holding him hostage. He's like, yeah, I got it. He's like, right, I'm sorry. It's just like, I've always had to explain things to Gordy, and you don't need me to. Anyways, right. So he decides, like, no, I'm gonna be there for my son, because he was kind of putting the campaign first. Which there was also that sweet moment of like, what he also started this is because why he wanted Benicio to feel more okay with his name, because he's even like, oh, I just want to be called Ben. Like, I don't want to stand out. He wants his son to be able to be proud of who he is and where he comes from, be proud of his heritage, and embrace his name with pride. He's like, that's something I can't give him. That's something he's got to get himself, is his confidence and pride. And I thought that was beautiful. And then Two-Face holding Benicio hostage, and Gordon's like, wait, what? Why would you do that? I can't believe you do this. He's like, what? I'm Two-Face. It's literally in my name. I'm designed to be Two-Face. Like, why didn't you see this coming? And then finding out, like, oh man, like, his whole plan is he wants Gordon to become mayor so that he can become the ADA again. He can become the DA again. And it's like, oh, so that's what this is all about. I love that so much. Oh God, I'm jumping around a lot. I forgot about that line when he was talking to Debbie, and he brought Debbie that dish, and she's like, "Oh, is this ethnic?" And he's like, "Yes, it's ethnic." Speaking of racist, I was like, oh, I love that. Oh God, I love that. But putting that aside, he was still going to kill Joker and Benicio, because it's like, right, they're like, we can't leave him around, he's too much of a threat. And I love the whole situation of, what was that line from, there's a line from Gordon, he's like, oh, I kill him. He's like, oh, that's a pretty heinous crime. Those are pretty heinous cases. And I was like, I had to pause, I was like, So, did anyone else read too much into that line like I did? Because, once again, if you're unaware, Christopher Maloney voices Gordon, right? Which he was on SVU. That's part of the SVU opening. It's like detectives who investigate these heinous crimes. And I was like, because I think he said the word crimes instead of, not cases. I think I said cases, but I think he said crimes. And I'm like, did they write that specifically? Because it's like the fact that, once again, I'm probably reading too much into it, but it sounded too, like, on purpose. But like I said, I could have been reading too much into it. But that sounded like that was kind of like a wink and a nod to, like, Christopher Maloney playing Stabler. And you just, like, that's part of SVU's, like, opening tagline. Either way, putting all that aside, that maybe that, like I said, it could easily just be me reading way too much into that. But other than that, you have, Joker willing to give up the whole campaign. It's like, right, I went into this for my family's sake, and I will give it up for my family's sake. And they're on that ride, and Gordon's trying to save them. It was actually a pretty badass moment for Gordon. I love the whole thing of like, Dad, like Superman's come to save us. Oh no, it's just Gordon. Keep screaming, son. But luckily they all survived it. So, and Gordon was ready to kill Two-Face, but Joker's like, no, that's not the way you handle things. I should also point out, I also love that he is like handling the, like, it's a joke, but I'm sure it's a really big conversation. A lot of stuff actually talks about it a little bit, like the mental health of like Gotham to some extent. Like they don't talk about it a lot. Obviously the show kind of used it in a little joking sense, but it's also a little serious because he's like, oh yeah, though, why the waiting list like for Arkham's like 3 years on like getting like some mental health treatment. It's like, yeah, mental health treatment could probably go a long way in Gotham. But either way, Joker proving himself to be a really good guy, to the point Gordon's like, you know what? I'm a step down and you should become mayor. And the fact is, I can't wait to work with you. Being commissioner is good. He's like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm dismantling the police department. So it's like, yeah, you're out of a job. And then bounces. And I love Bethany rolls up and smashes into Two-Face. It's like, oh, I'll make sure he has no Two-Faces anymore or something like that. But it's like, oh no, it's Taco Tuesday. Let's go home. And it's this beautiful thing. Gordon telling Barbara, like, no, I gotta choose you, so what happens next and all that, especially now that Gordon kind of has nothing. Because that was also the thing, like, Gordon was like, wow, you changed for your family? He was like, geez, I didn't even stop drinking for my family. He's like, well, I did, but then I started drinking again, but just not nearly as much. It's like, right, the way you treat your stepson is the way I wish I could treat my own biological daughter. And he's like, yeah, it's like, wait, you called me dad, son? He's like, yeah, I've always called you dad. Like, I called you dad like 3 times on a roller coaster. It's like, oh, it's super sweet, adorable. And then him winning the campaign and getting celebrated on stage. And then Ivy and Harley coming back from New Orleans being like, wait, what? We were gone for 4 days. It's like, yeah, that's going to be interesting. It's like, in that span of time, Joker got elected as mayor. It's like, yeah, shit happens quick in politics. Because we also found out that it was Two-Face that poisoned the mayor, which is like, once again, I'm Two-Face. Like, what made you think I was a good guy? Either way, this episode was a fucking blast. I loved it. Oh, it's so good. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, whether or not Bruce/Batman has a reaction to this in the future is going to be interesting. What new Gotham's going to look like. Before you had Joker as a dictator type of situation, obviously. But now it's like, no, it's him just straight up just being a mayor, trying to push some positive things for Gotham and what that means in the grand scheme of things. When like you're probably going to see a lot of background stuff about it potentially in future episodes, like how Harley feels about it. It's like, once again, that's her eggs, like who cares, whatever. They're okay enough, like, I mean, like, things weren't too bad when they talked during the Court of Owls episode. That was episode 4? I believe that was episode 4. Yeah, so they seemed decently okay, so it probably won't bother her too much. It's just gonna be like, wow, the world is wild. It's probably all that'll kind of get chalked up to. I also forgot that line that was so good, that obviously he won over on Debbie, ended up taking her parking space, and it's like, yeah, I'm your new nightmare, bitch, and laughs maniacally. I'm like, okay, that's good. The petty win. I love it. Not even petty, but it's just like, once again, just showing up his arch nemesis. Like, I love that's your new thing, Joker. Yes, I'm glad, like, after all these years, you finally moved past the Batman thing and found someone else to kind of obsess over. So once again, what Gotham looks like under the new Joker's reign is going to definitely be interesting. Like I said, this episode was just so much fun, and I'm interested to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.